on the question, I'm going to have to make a confession here. How do you speak to conservatives? I never meet any conservatives. I live in a bubble. People come to hear me. They're not generally conservative. I live in Berkeley, and I read antiwar.com. I also read the New York Times. I used to know a lot of conservatives. I was in the government, was in the Pentagon, and so forth, but none of them would be in any contact with me, whatever, from the day, June 13th, 1971, that the Pentagon Papers came out. I lost all of my friends, all of whom, the husbands, had clearances. In those days, it was all men. And they could not afford to be in the same room with me. I just heard today from a friend of mine in Washington who gave a dinner party last night. And I've often, she gives very good dinner parties with a lot of journalists, in particular. She's a journalist herself. And she mentioned that several people that she had invited and wanted to come couldn't come because Tom Drake was coming, who of course is the NSA whistleblower whose life was ruined, although he's recovered and he's getting on, but by having revealed enormous waste and criminality in NSA. And the judge basically in the end threw out the charges and refused to give even the fine that the prosecutors asked for, because he said, "You've already destroyed this man's life. He lost his home, lost everything, great pressure on his marriage." So these people who I knew, who could not come, it made enrages me, not because it surprises me, but because I had that experience so often over the last 40 years, not so much lately, because it just doesn't arise, but for so often, people who had clearance, for example, or who admired people who had clearances, or might want someday to have a clearance. I've never been invited to a political science seminar since June 13th. The last one I was at was the week before that at MIT in Harvard. So I told various people who come out of these establishments, not only will you lose all your friends, and they've noticed that already, but they'll never come back. And so don't ask me how to speak to conservatives. I haven't heard of it. In terms of the question was, I think, how did I?
Do you want to restate that question for us?
Sure. So.
Yeah. It's his question, so I'm going to get the microphone. Why don't you come up and tell him directly?
So
Just come straight up to him.
Okay.
I'm curious about sort of as somebody who was in the power of right? That's all whistleblowers have to be in order to have information that they need. What's the kind of process of coming to consciousness to understand that the system is flawed and that information has to get out?
Okay, one thing that I've met a lot of whistleblowers now, and I make a point of trying to meet them when they come out, because I feel we have a lot in common. I admire what they've done, and I want them to give them my support and so forth. And I've asked a lot of them, and none of them really, including myself, are able very well to answer the question, why did you and not your colleagues? You know, what if you don't know? Almost nobody knows an answer to that. But it seemed very natural to do it at the moment. Now, a factor there, which doesn't apply to all of them, but certainly to me and to a lot of others, is an example of some kind. If any of you have seen this picture, I have very mixed feelings about the Fifth Estate. You see, it's very slanderous for Julian Assange at the end, but not so bad in most of the movie. But they quote several times the line that Julian always attributed to me. I'd be glad to think I did give it to him. I'd be glad to think I invented it, but I don't know whether I did or not. Courage is contagious. And I'm speaking from my own experience in that had it not been for meeting face-to-face people that I could identify with, Randy Keeler had been to Harvard as I had, was intellectual, whatnot, and was in jail, that was on his way to prison for years for draft resistance. The question would not have occurred to me What could I do to help end the war now that I'm ready to go to jail like him? And that example was crucial to me. I was very pleased I did have a long several hours communication with Snowden, and at the very end of it, I said, look, we talked so long, it was on a computer, chatted so long here, I have to ask you, did the Pentagon Papers, which I wrote 4 years ago, have any role in your thinking in doing this? And I wouldn't have expected Manning, for example, who was 22 at the time, and he said, oh yeah, he said, I saw the movie, Most Dangerous Man in America, Daniel Ellsberg, the Pentagon Papers, a year ago with my partner, his lover. And he had to leave without telling her what he'd done or why he was doing it or anything. Didn't want to implicate her, which he said he felt very bad about that film. He said, we saw it together, we thought you were fantastic and Nixon was a dick. So, he said that movie definitely strengthened my resolve to do what I was already thinking about doing. So the example is important. The third aspect is what you heard me quote from Snowden, and that is, in many cases, again, not every case, coming to see what you're involved in, whether it's criminality or something that's been going on for a long time, and it's still going on, or something that lies in the future, something that needs warning, is to see the process that you might have been part of, what would happen if you didn't break silence, as being not only dangerous and non-optimal and mistaken, but wrong, criminal. By the way, one absolute criteria for staying in the establishment, being available as an official in some other administration, if not this one, or being a consultant, or being taken seriously by these people. There's a number of them. Certain subjects are taboo, certain words are taboo, and would cut you out immediately. And one is the word immoral, and another is the word criminal. You can say, I think this policy is not the best, or has some real hidden dangers here. It may not serve our purposes. You can say that even quite strongly, but you can't say, and I also regard it as criminal or evil. That would be the last meeting you were in of any kind of that sort. And that word can't occur in the New York Times about government policy. When Keller was having a debate in print with Greenwald just last week about this new venture, and Keller was questioning whether it would really bring anything worthwhile to the community. Greenwald mentioned the inability of the New York Times, under pressure from its readers, nevertheless resisting pressure, could not use the word torture for anything that Bush or Obama had done. Now it so happens that what Manning revealed and what caused him to go over the line was the realization, two things, I'll mention another word, two things. He became aware that we were handing people over for torture by the Iraqis, which is just as criminal and immoral as doing it ourselves. The law makes no distinction there. He was supposed to investigate and stop it. And when he found that his superiors were involved in a cover-up, that he's told his informant, his confidant who told the FBI, that made him think that this was wrong, it shouldn't be part of this. He said, I found I was part of something that I was totally against. And you just heard that from Snowden. And that's what I came to feel. And without going at greater length, I'll mention one other word that affected all of us, or at least Manning and me. Murder. Manning put out the video, which Assange chose the title for, which was very controversial. Who knows what the title was? What? Collateral murder. Collateral murder, not just damage. Well, they're being killed, and they're civilians, they're unarmed, and there are people here, and some of them are wounded, and you're shooting them. Now, I was a Marine lieutenant who taught World War. We didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I was a battalion operations officer, training. And that was murder. So